Just be me tripping over. Brilliant. Great. Well, Ruwani, it's so nice to have you on the People Making Payments podcast today. Really excited that you could come on, and let's just jump straight into it. I obviously already know you, but like, let's say we're meeting at a party for the first time or like an extended family reunion or something. How do you explain what you do to people in just very layman's terms?
Yeah, I mean, to be completely honest with you, when I say I'm director of payments, everyone's like, what does that mean? So I try and bring it to life. Well, previously, I was mainly on the merchant acquiring side and payment acceptance. So I would say to my friends or someone that I've just met that, see that POS terminal over there, or when you're making an e-commerce payment, I create solutions around that. And then sometimes that piques people's interest and they want to know more. And then, I can talk about payments until the cows come home. And other times they're like, oh, wow, that's cool. And then, we carry on to something else.
Because if they're not payment nerds like we are, they can quickly lose interest.
Yeah, exactly. So if they are a payment nerd, they're like, oh, that's interesting. Well, I've got a card. I'm like, well, I can talk to you about card payments, open banking, anything really.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I'm not really the life of the party if I talk about payments.
Exactly. And the thing is, I think people don't realise, especially consumers, that there's this whole world, this whole ecosystem, and all of this very hard work from people like you that make those transactions feel seamless and frictionless in their day-to-day roles.
Yeah, actually, I was asked the question on the weekends when I said I was director of payments at Starling. Someone asked me, someone new I just met, what does that mean? I actually just whipped out my phone with the Starling card. So I could see that digital card and see my physical card. My team actually create those solutions and they were like, oh, wow, that's actually quite interesting. So I'm like, yeah, it is.
Yeah, brilliant. It really is. So, right, Ruwani, first up, I wanted to speak about embedded banking and embedded finance because I know it's a massive hot topic right now and an area that you've been especially involved with your time in Starling. So just to make sure we're all on the same page, in case there are some people watching or listening who are kind of new to the embedded payments party and don't kind of know what it is, do you want to just quickly give us a quick 101 on the topic and what it means in terms of the things that it's there to solve for?
Yeah, sure. So in my view, and I think basically in the industry's view, is embedded payments or embedded finance is where you have financial services at the point of need, where traditional financial services aren't actually surfaced. So these could be in non-financial journeys. And because of the advent of technology and APIs, now banks and payment service providers' solutions can be easily and beautifully embedded in non-financial customer journeys. However, I actually personally think the first embedded finance or embedded payments journey was actually way back before the internet was even around, was when you could actually get a retail credit card at a retailer. Yeah. So to pay off your purchases, you're in a non-financial journey, you're not in a bank, you're in a retailer. I've just bought, oh my gosh, way too many clothes and I need some credit, a line of credit to actually pay this off. And this is where you go to the department store and actually sign up to a credit card to then pay off your purchases. So I personally think embedded payments has actually been around for a long time.
Yeah, if you think about sort of like being at the automotive dealer as well and taking out a car financing or a loan or something like that. But that's super interesting, right? So I think what you're saying is that embedded financing or embedded payments is not really a new thing. It maybe looks a bit different in the digital world, but the concept itself has been around for, well, donkey's years, basically.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people say it's like the unbundling of financial services. Now, apparently, there's a trend of bundling financial services back together. But it's taking the best bits of financial services or some product offering and then offering it in a non-financial journey or you don't have to go to a bank anymore as such because it's providing financial services at that point of need, really understanding when a customer would actually want that product.
Yeah, and why is that important?
I guess it's a way for financial institutions to expand their product offering, but also help customers when customers don't really understand that they have access to these services or have access to credit. A best use case is obviously Klarna and the buy now, pay later industry. And yes, there is some regulation coming around that, but these Klarna targeted or buy now, pay later companies targeted customers where they couldn't have access to credit. So there is a level of financial inclusion there as well with embedded financial services.
Yeah, brilliant. And you talked a little bit about sort of historically what those use cases were in sort of the retail environment. What do you think are sort of some of the sort of more mature, sort of modern day use cases for it? And what do you see as some sort of exciting use cases that are kind of coming down the line for embedded payments?
Yeah, sure. So on the B2B side, so my background is mainly merchant acquiring or merchant acceptance. Acquirers or PSPs can actually underwrite loans to their merchants, to their customers, with a credit company in the background. So companies such as Pipe, ULend, those type of companies are actually embedding their products into acquirer platforms. So then acquirers can provide those products to their merchants, and acquirers can see that transaction data from the merchants, or and they also have visibility of when they're going to pay the merchant. So that data is used to actually underwrite loans to merchants, which is super important in these days, because SME financing and SME lending is quite a hot topic today.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just about sort of embedding payments in customer journeys, but actually that B2B use case and providing financing or loans or services to merchants at their point of need.
Exactly. So it's not only B2C use cases; it's B2B, and SMEs have a big need for financing. So it's a really good use case there. I guess obviously the biggest use case is embedded payments. Amazon was the first one to do it with one-click payments. Amazon actually patented one-click payments in the 90s. I think it was 97. And it was only in 2015 when the patent actually expired. So that's when the advent of embedded payments really grew. Apple actually did have one-click payments with iTunes, but they actually paid Amazon for the privilege. So it's really interesting that Amazon gate-kept embedded payments and one-click payments for such a long time.
Yeah, super interesting. And then, so what is it like? What do you think is the advantage then of, if you think about an acquirer offering financing within their merchant interface, let's say, what is the benefit of that to the merchant?
I honestly believe it's all about stickiness and loyalty. So you as an acquirer or PSP, you have multiple relationships with multiple merchants, but in today's day and age, competition is rife with acquiring and PSP and payment services. So myself as a merchant, who is actually going to help me beyond just transaction processing and payment processing? I want to work with someone that really understands my needs and can actually provide solutions or financial services to help me. And there's a sense of loyalty and I guess, bit of a relationship management there, where if I as a merchant am being serviced properly, because the PSP requires understanding my needs, I'm more likely to stay with them, and then you create that stickiness.
Yeah, and I think one of the sort of the themes I think we're discussing a lot sort of at the moment, especially sort of at K and the sort of work that we're doing, is very much around, okay, payments can be quite a commoditized space, right? So how do you actually either acquire new customers, or how do you grow your share with customers where they have multiple providers in place, right? And that whole thing around differentiation through value-added services, through being able to offer something that is going to enable them strategically as a business as well. So going beyond just being a payments provider, but actually being an enabler. And I suppose, when you sit on the data, the financial data of that merchant, it actually unlocks something quite powerful in terms of then how you can underwrite them and add value.
So it is less risky, and acquirers and PSPs have so much access to data. So why don't we use it in these sort of situations? And I personally think that's one of the best examples of embedded finance. We do talk about a lot of B2C propositions, but that is a big B2B proposition, I think, which is gaining traction.
Brilliant. And were there any other use cases that you think kind of you're seeing on the horizon as sort of the next big thing?
With the advent of marketplaces, so things like Airbnb or Vinted, where you're bringing buyers and sellers together, embedded payments and embedded, I guess, banking is quite important there.
What would that look like in practice?
So, for example, if I'm an Airbnb seller and I log into my sorry, not a seller, an Airbnb, what are they called? Property manager. I log into my account, I put my properties there, and I can see all my payments coming through with all the different renters there. Now, if I'm seeing all those payments coming through, that's actually an embedded payment functionality. But in the background, there's actually a payment account that is presenting all that data and making it easy for me to reconcile my payments, seeing if each renter has actually paid, or providing a refund really easily, all within the ecosystem of Airbnb. And that's just one use case of a marketplace. And I think with the advent of marketplaces now growing, with so many buyers and sellers coming together, like Depop, Vinted, those experiences are very important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so. We've talked a lot about sort of the experience here, right, in terms of I guess taking not sort of necessarily a product-centric view in terms of developing embedded payments propositions, but kind of like an experience-centric view in how you do this. Could you talk to me and maybe break this down in terms of, as a strategist in this space, if you're looking to develop some kind of embedded payment or embedded financing solution, what's the best way to go about that to make sure you're really taking that experience-centric and not that product-centric view? So that was a very, very long question.
No, I completely understand the question.
From the beginning to the end.
Yeah, I think personally, sometimes as payments people, we are sitting in our own echo chamber and we talk about embedded payments, embedded finance, but when you talk to the average Joe on the street, they'll be like, what are you talking about? So I can't go to a customer or user and say, hey, do you think you want my embedded payments product? It just doesn't make sense. So I honestly believe, and I do this concept with anything and any work I do in terms of product, you always have to start with the customer experience. What pain point are you solving for? What benefit are you providing them? And then start with a customer journey mapping, or what benefits you're providing them, and then you work backwards in terms of the solution. It was actually, I think, Steve Jobs that actually said that you work with the customer experience and you work back to the technology. I think sometimes, and I've seen this in my experience, we start with the technology first and kind of try and shoehorn something into a customer experience, which doesn't work. So once you understand the customer experience, get that user research, understand what the trends are happening, understand their pain points, and then you figure out what APIs to build or who to partner with and which are the best banking or payment providers that you need to work with in order to get that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, from my experience of doing kind of customer journey mapping and pain point analysis in this space, I think it's always really important, right, to not just think about the payments part of the journey, but the sort of the more end-to-end experience that you're kind of slotting into. So you understand the full contextual reality of those people. Would you agree? Can you talk to that?
I 100% agree. I think to your point, it's not just about the payment process. So what happens after that? Or what happens, you also need to think about when it doesn't work correctly. So what's your error management? What's your issue resolution? In payments today, because everything is or should be API driven, as soon as a customer makes a payment, I should get a notification via an email because that payment's landed into the merchant account. And that's really done by more newer BaaS providers or banking as a service providers, where you have an API first solution. Some of the legacy players, it takes like 30 minutes, an hour to get that notification. So you want, with today's customer needs, instant gratification, instant notification is really handy.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I suppose, again, the payment might be enabling something else to happen. And so without a lack of visibility, it's almost like it has a knock-on effect in terms of the next step in their journey, potentially, and the friction that they feel in terms of the sort of the smoothness of the whole overall experience.
Yeah, exactly. Or the payment could be a result of something happening. So, if it's an e-commerce merchant, I take a payment as a merchant from a customer and the authorization happens, but the actual settlement doesn't actually get processed until me as a merchant actually ship those goods. So everything has to be all interlocked and integrated together.
Yeah, super interesting. And I really like the sort of the way that you think about it so holistically and so customer centrically. It's right up my street. Okay. let's talk about Starling Engine, because I know that that is an embedded banking proposition that you have at Starling. Can you talk to us about what that is and what it looks like?
Yeah, sure. So it's interesting you said embedded banking. So in the industry, we say banking as a service or software as a service, and Engine actually sits in the software as a service area. So this is where Starling has essentially replicated Starling's infrastructure and then sold it under the Starling Engine brand as a software as a service platform.
Can I read you my question then?
Yeah,
And get it
sure.
right next time? No, I'm joking.
But the thing is, though, the industry, it depends on what perspective you look at, right? So I would go to Engine if I've already got a banking license and I
Right.
want to modernize my current legacy platform. So I am a bank, but then I don't need a BaaS player because I don't need someone to piggyback on someone else's license. I just need the tech and the infrastructure.
Right.
Now, if I was an EMI or payment institute, like e-money institution license or payment institute who needs sponsorship in the UK or Europe, then I would be looking for a banking as a service provider or a sponsor bank. So that's the
Right.
way I differentiate it. Different perspectives have people have different perspectives, so it'd be interesting to hear what you think about it as well. But for Engine, it's really Engine's going to market to target mainly tier two, tier three banks around the world because a lot of them need modernizing, especially with the advent of digital banks. A lot of legacy banks need to keep up. So this is the main target market, and especially in North America and in Europe.
And can you paint a sort of a practical picture of what it looks like in terms of practice, like an example of how it's been implemented by a
Yeah.
financial institution, and kind of essentially what it solves for, both in terms for the financial institution, but also for the customers that they're serving as well.
Yeah, sure. So I think the way we're quite different, or Engine's quite different, is like we're a core banking infrastructure, so API first. However, Engine has additional layers where we can provide SDKs to build an app, or even actually provide the app itself for that bank to actually provide to their customers. Additionally, we have what's called a management portal, so a back office portal. And one of the biggest issues or pain points for legacy banks is that as a customer service operator, you're opening multiple different windows trying to service the customer. And our management portal system is a very strong proposition. And that's actually what piques a lot of interest from banks, especially legacy banks. It's like, oh, wow, I can actually get all my operations onto one screen and into one portal. So we're not just the API, we also do provide those experience layers as well. We worked with banks in Australia, so AMP Bank, Salt Bank in Romania, and our latest one is in New Zealand, a bank called SBS, and also another bank in Canada, Tangerine, which is owned by Scotiabank. And Tangerine is a digital-first bank, so they really need these digital experiences for their customers.
Right, so Ruwani, this has been a real whistle-stop tour of all things embedded payments, banking and finance. We've talked about consumer propositions, merchant propositions, and sort of like how, to embed financial experiences for banks and financial institutions as well. Kind of bringing it all together then, to wrap up, what do you think kind of are the key takeaways for you if you were sort of giving some sort of nuggets of wisdom to somebody looking to get into this space?
Yeah, I think, and I'll say it again, is really understand the customer proposition and the value proposition you're giving them. So understand the customer journeys, the UX, UI, invest in a really good designer to really understand, and then test that UI, UX design with customers or your potential target market, and then work backwards and then understand, the right players to actually help you with that journey. I always believe in doing a very strict RFI, RFP round, but also leverage your network and understand best practices as well.
And if you're doing an RFI for potential partners, like what kind of criteria do you judge those embedded payment partners on? Like what's
and
important?
it does depend on your proposition, right? So from a payments perspective, the one key thing I actually tell my peers is the instant notifications of those payments. So So as soon as a payment lands into the account, do I get an instant notification? What is my API uptime and the instantaneous of the API? I think a lot of legacy players do say they have instant notifications, but I don't think that's always the case, that there's sometimes a 30-minute, 1-hour lag. So that's really important to make sure that the APIs from that vendor is up to scratch for what you need.
Absolutely. So making sure that sort of that real-time visibility is there to sort of minimise the friction.
Exactly, and I think we've touched on it before. It's not just about the front-end customer journey, but it's the end-to-end. So, things like reconciliation, making sure you've got the right data to present to the customer, using that data for any other processes downstream as well. So the richness of the API is very important.
Yeah, brilliant. Love it. All right, then. Well, let's wrap up there and go to the quick fire round. Dan?
Cool. Good first half. Right, Ruwani, a couple of questions. These are really they're just a bit of fun. And they're, as the People Making Payments podcast, it's getting to know you better as a person, as well as a professional in the space. So just a bit of fun. Don't overthink them, interpret them how you want. Feel free to elaborate if you feel like it needs it. But let's go for it. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So first in the office or last to leave?
First in the office. And usually last to leave as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, both.
I was going to say probably both.
That's such a good answer.
Yeah.
There are more, but that's just the best answer. That's so good.
Mic drop.
Meeting or an email?
Oh, it depends on the context, but I do like getting in person in a room. I think that is underestimated sometimes.
Yeah. I think especially when, with working from home being so much more prevalent, coming into the office has just got such a different vibe about it, and then having proper meetings is good. I think you get a lot from it, and you realise when you don't get it. That's what I do anyway.
Sometimes when in the office you socialise too much, so so much work done.
You try sitting next to Shona.
Yeah, Dan, I was going to say Dan and I sit next to each other, and he doesn't get any work done.
This morning Shona's like, right, I'm going to get my head down for 2 hours, and then we just spoke for 2 hours. Okay, next one. Spreadsheet or whiteboard?
Whiteboard. Easy one.
I feel
Have you got
that
good handwriting then?
No. That's also another thing. I'll take a photo of the whiteboard. It's like, what was I writing? I actually write all my notes on a laptop. So as soon as I hold a pen, it's worse than doctor's handwriting. So
I feel like actually thinking about it, that and the question before, I reckon there'll be an interesting study into, I bet a lot of people who say meeting also say whiteboard.
Oh, really?
And a lot of people that say email might say spreadsheet. I don't know, because, maybe. Okay. The strategy or the execution? You can't say both on this one.
Oh, I like doing the strategy as long as I can oversee the execution. So,
Okay, good, well navigated. That's
Yeah, you want to make sure that it's properly.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
set up a foundational framework or kind of like a North Star, and then get my team.
Yeah.
I'm not the type of person to just chuck it over to my team. It's like, here, let's work together to execute this, and then,
Yeah, and exactly. And what you were saying about the importance of understanding the customer journey, customer pain points, customer needs, and building. It sounds like maybe you're building strategies around that as well, right?
Exactly.
So I think that's something that once you get into that, you sort of have a vision, right, of then how that's going to really play out in practice.
Exactly.
Sorry, I'll stop interrupting.
You've had one of your sections.
I
You've
forgot
got
it's
another
quick
one.
fire, and I just
So it's sort of saying me too. Yeah, exactly. Meticulous planner or figure it out as you go?
figure it as I go.
Nice. Don't feel like you have to answer this in the way you'll know what I mean when I say it. Conference panel or podcast guest?
Careful now.
I do like a podcast guest, to be honest. So you can deep dive into the topics that you really want to, whereas sometimes on a panel you don't.
Yeah.
I know, but I've seen you on panels and you're really good.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. Great quick fire round. That's our halfway point.
Good. All right then. So let's move on now to the topic of AI, because what else is anybody talking about? We've been to some events recently, all over the headline stages. AI is a massive topic, and it's something that, there's a lot of buzz around, a lot of people are very excited about. What I always find fascinating is then when I have offline conversations with people, there's a real diversity of views in terms of sort of sort of where we are in the hype curve, and really where they see very real use cases and very real examples of where it's going to solve for something, and really realise the potential that I think everyone knows that it has. So sorry, that's a very, very long-winded way of asking, how do you see AI in terms of where we are in adoption maturity, and where there are some, again, exciting use cases that you think it's really got an opportunity to solve for?
Sure. I think in payments, AI or machine learning has actually been around for quite some time, mainly on the back end processing. So with decisioning, authorization, fraud checks. But I think now with the advent of agents, it's becoming more and more closer to the front end and just moving up towards the front of the stack. I think with payments, because we see so much data, authorization and fraud decisioning, it's such a great use case anyway. If you're a merchant and on the acquiring side, payment orchestration, understanding low-cost routing, depending on if you're a large merchant, wanting to get connected to various different acquirers or making sure you've got the lowest interchange, then that's also another great use case. If you're a recurring billing merchant, subscription merchant, things like retries, intelligent retries is also very useful as well. Now, with agentic commerce, which is obviously the biggest buzzword now, there's quite a few use cases, but I don't know if it is as mainstream as we would like it. And I personally believe the reason is because if you look at our regulation and the payment systems regulations, it's all about knowing your customer and knowing the person, not knowing your agent. I have seen some partnerships with like large PSPs. I think WorldPay partnered with Trulio, which is an AML KYC company, to have a know your agent software or a product. So I think regulation at the moment is holding us back to see agentic commerce use cases exceed, but it will get there. Regulation will hopefully catch up.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it almost feels like we're in a bit of a limbo, right? The merchant doesn't really know who's accountable and what they're accountable for. Maybe the payment service providers or the technology providers aren't quite sure either.
Yeah.
Just now, it seems like there's some details that need to be ironed out, right?
Because like I look after the Starling Bank's issuing and card issuing side. So how do I know as a bank it's an agent or a customer, or like, how do I know that transaction is being generated by an agent? And the schemes have updated, like your POS data codes. Won't go into the boring technical payments detail.
Oh, we love it.
But the agent can now, through an authorization message, say, yeah, I am an agent. So issuers now have to put back that into your fraud rules and authorization rules, but also like how do chargebacks work? How do disputes work? We're essentially creating another layer, another technology layer that regulation needs to catch up with, and also the scheme compliance and scheme processes have to as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So can you give me a few examples of sort of how you're applying AI at Starling, and sort of how you're sort of seeing sort of practically in your day-to-day how already delivering some real-life benefits to your customers?
Sure. So within our app, we've got two features, one called Scam Intelligence and another one called Spend Intelligence. So Scam Intelligence is trying to combat a big problem in the UK, which is APP fraud. In 2024, there was 1.17 billion lost in APP scams.
Mm-hmm. And just in case anyone's not sure, what does APP stand for?
Authorized push payment fraud. So it's when someone tries to scam you on Facebook and they're selling like fake tickets, and then you have to transfer money to them. So a lot of the scams do happen on like marketplaces or Facebook or social media. So what our feature can do in the app is you upload a photo or take a photo of it, and we can tell you pretty much straight away if it's too good to be true and if it's a scam.
Yeah.
So based on various different signals, such as, that price seems a bit too low for that item, or it just the advert just looks a bit dodgy. There's other different data signals there that we can tell you straight away whether or not it's a scam.
Oh, wow. I bet that comes in really handy, right?
Yeah, it does. And Starling's motto is all about being good with money, so making sure that you're safe and also that you've got the right tools for financial management. And that's when we launched Spend Intelligence on the app. So it's like our AI assistant to ask you various different things about, how much did you spend at a certain merchant, looking at your payment trends, moving money around within our spaces, which our spaces are like essentially little money pots. And yeah, making sure that you're good with money and can do financial planning and management quite well.
Oh, okay then. So it's almost like taking, the concept of sort of the spend insights, which have been around for a while, but making it feel like more personalised.
Conversational.
And
yes.
conversational.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I would dread to think what it would make of my spending habits. Yes, but brilliant. And then so it seems then that sort of where Starling's going with this is the AI application for fraud. Very specific type of fraud, helping helping clients understand their spending more accurately as well.
To be good with money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Logo is, because we just realize like customers need some help with financial tools and financial planning, and like using an AI agent is actually a great use case to help them do that, because we've got the data, we can see the movement of money within the app. So yeah, to have a conversation with the app is actually very helpful.
Yeah. And we talked about regulation earlier in terms of one of the challenges around adoption of agentic AI. Do you feel like there are any other challenges or any other blockers that, again, you see as sort of someone practically working in the industry of how to use agentic AI or harness it effectively?
To be completely honest with you, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm a bit old school, is like, what problem are we trying to solve for as well? So we see a lot of merchants, or on the acquiring side of the merchant side, that, I can ask ChatGPT to buy me something, and, go from discovery all the way to payment. I personally don't know if I would trust ChatGPT, and maybe it's just showing my age, I don't know. But I actually do like the shopping and buying experience, and I know a lot of people do. But I think where agents can really help is actually to do a lot of research and doing trip planning or holiday planning, and then provide a lot of information to then, push a button to then, make that purchase. I think to answer your question fully, it's like, what problems are we trying to solve for, or what better experiences can we have? And I don't think as an industry we are really elevating that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think, to your point, it's not necessarily that people don't like the shopping experience as a whole, or they don't still want to go into store, or they don't want to still have the experience of choosing or making their own purchases, right? But it sounds like maybe there's a case for synthesizing the amount of options that are available, reducing the overwhelm.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really, really, really interesting. I'm the same. I don't think I would just give off my credentials to an agent to go out there and spend on my behalf. I think I think there are some sort of use cases, aren't there, around sort of like recurring payments, or payments where you would trust it to make the same sort of boring old payments on your behalf.
And I think from a security perspective, using virtual cards or tokens, you can be secure, like one-off virtual cards or tokens, to make sure then that that agent can't make a payment on your behalf accidentally or something. So the one-use payment infrastructure is actually quite useful in these use cases, which is relatively new technology. Well, not that new, but you don't have to worry about giving your full card details to an agent.
Yeah, absolutely. So then I think that probably then has an impact on the issuing side of the business, right? Because I know that's part of, or big part of your role is on the issuing. So making sure, I'd imagine, that the issuing products that you provide are sort of fit for the future in terms of whatever that new payment flow or the new kind of commerce and payment flow might look like.
Yeah, exactly. So today we can, as a Starling customer, I can create spaces, and then for each space I can create its own virtual card. So that virtual card I could just use, I don't know, just on ChatGPT or agentic commerce, so I can track that quite easily in the app. So it's about providing different experiences using or reusing the payment technology, or trying to enhance that experience, not trying to shoehorn old processes in a new technology. We need to upgrade or make the experiences slightly different in these different flows.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like, with the virtual card, allowing people to experiment safely
Exactly.
with
That's a
these
good
emerging
way.
technologies.
That's a good way of putting it, actually, experimenting safely with a virtual card. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. And then I guess my final question on the whole AI and agentic AI piece again, you talked a little bit about, sort of as an industry, it's really important to, again, really understand what you're solving for, make sure that the way that it's being sort of designed and deployed is solving for a real world pain point. Sort of like, how do you go about, on a practical level, deciphering that?
I think it's really firstly, understanding what data you have access to and the data that we have. Like, we are very fortunate, well, I'm very fortunate that I work in a newer bank, a challenger bank, which we've got a lot of flexibility in terms of technology and access to data. So from a payments perspective, one of the challenges any issuer has is how can I improve authorization rates, but also making sure that there's low fraud. And looking at the different data points that we can have to enhance that, especially with device provisioning, for example. I know if a customer is using their device, how can I put that into my learning models or into different data processes? I know I'm kind of sounding boring again, but I think it's really understanding what the benefit is for the customer, but also the business, and also protecting our customers to make sure that these payments are being authorized properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And sort of being that steward through these big changes in innovation that people can rely on, that you're going to, fundamentally keep their money safe.
Yeah, keep their money safe, but also make sure that that we're improving the processes as well. We're not just using AI for the sake of AI necessarily. Yeah. So things that we could look into from a payment processing perspective is also obviously authorizations, but looking how we can enhance like disputes processing or chargebacks or things like that, things that are quite friction points for customers, and make that a better experience for them.
Yeah, amazing. Brilliant. This is just my cup of tea, this kind of conversation.
I just feel like agentic commerce is such a big buzzword that people, I'm like, yeah, okay, it doesn't make sense all the time.
Yeah.
I think in transaction processing, which is not sexy, is where you get the best benefit.
Yeah. Well, I think it's very sexy. Well, and that's the thing. And that sort of like was the sort of, I guess, sort of the premise of my question in the beginning, right? Is because, like you say, there's a lot of buzz. It's been around for years already. And so I think it's really important to have these practical conversations and sort of like bring it down to, like you said, what is the business case? What do the customers need? And you say it's boring, but I think it's just the fundamentals, right, of good strategy and good business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And especially something so tried and true like authorizations and transaction processing, and we've got so much data, like there's so much you can do with AI and authorizations and making sure that they're right.
So, well, it's been very interesting, not boring at all, talking, and I've just loved to get all of your perspectives on everything from embedded banking all the way through to agentic AI. I think to wrap up, let's all take a breather. Let's stop talking about payments for a minute. Mm-hmm. Let's say that you never got into payments, and because I don't think a lot of people plan to get into payments, to be honest. I know I didn't, but
no,
I'm not sure.
I did fall into payments actually, so yeah.
Yeah. So my question is, what do you think in a parallel universe, in a parallel life, what would you have been doing if you hadn't been a payment superstar?
So I would have loved to be a detective.
Wow.
Yeah, I really like problem solving, and I do love crime shows as well. So I do feel like an element of my role and just being in product and tech is all about problem solving, and wearing multiple different hats.
Yeah. So. And if you're first one in, last one out, that would suit you down. They're long hours, aren't they? Yeah,
exactly. I'm not sure how I would deal with like gruesome like bodies and stuff, but like I do like fact finding and clues, and any detective or crime show I will watch. So
yeah, amazing. All right then. So my next question is, what do you feel is your best achievement in life that no one will read on your LinkedIn profile?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. Probably moving countries on a whim. and just managing to settle in the UK. I'm Australian, if you didn't realise with my accent. And just leaving a life behind and then establishing a great life here. Don't get me wrong, it was tough, but I've got such amazing friends and family here now, and I call the UK, my proper home.
Yeah.
I love Australia, don't get me wrong, but the UK is definitely my home now.
Yeah, amazing. It takes a lot of like grit and resilience, I think, to sort of upend and go across the world.
Yeah, it was only meant to be a year. I got transferred with my previous employer, American Express, and yeah, it ended up being 5 years and then 7 years, and now it's been 15 years. So, yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, we're very happy to have you here as one of our own. And yeah, thank you for coming on. With that, a little cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.